She was 24, wearing a faded dress, clutching a battered suitcase that barely latched shut, and accompanied by a dog no one else wanted. They had thrown her out of the only home she had ever known on a scorching morning. With nowhere to go, she walked along a dusty road that seemed to lead nowhere until she spotted an old estate half hidden among tall weeds. It looked forgotten by both God and people. No food, no signs of life, just crumbling walls and a heavy silence. Any other person might have cried and turned back. But Mariana made a different choice. She decided to stay, even though she didn't own the land, had no idea how she would survive, and couldn't possibly know that this abandoned place held secrets that would transform her life forever. Mariana woke up that morning unaware it would be the last time she slept under that roof. The sun had barely risen when her stepfather pounded on the door of the tiny storeroom where she slept. He had done it the same way since she was a child, making her heart leap into her throat every single time. "You're too old to keep eating for free," he said flatly. "Rosa needs the room for her things. It's time you left and started living like an adult." Mariana looked into his eyes, searching for any trace of warmth or gratitude for all the years she had cooked, cleaned, washed, ironed, and mended for the household, working like two people without ever hearing a single word of thanks. She found nothing, only the cold impatience of a man eager to be rid of a burden. Her real mother had died when Mariana was 9. A sudden fever took her in 4 days, stealing away the only person who had ever shown her real love. Ramon was not her father. He was the man her mother had brought home when Mariana was still an infant. From the day of the funeral, it was clear he only tolerated the girl because he needed someone to run the house. Mariana had grown up between the stove and the wash tub, learning to swallow exhaustion and loneliness in silence. She had never attended school. She had never owned a new dress. No one had ever told her she mattered. The only real gift her mother left, besides a small painted figurine of the Virgin, was the ability to read. Before the illness, she had taught her daughter to sound out syllables, write her own name, and slowly decipher words on labels and notes. That small inheritance lived inside Mariana like a seed waiting for the right soil. When Rosa appeared, a woman with a loud laugh and cold eyes who treated Mariana like old furniture in the way, Mariana understood her days in that house were numbered. She simply hadn't expected it to end so abruptly, with a cardboard suitcase in her hand and the door slamming behind her before the morning coffee had even cooled. Rosa stood on the porch as Mariana descended the steps. She crossed her arms and smiled without a drop of kindness. She said nothing, but her silence cut deeper than any words. Mariana gripped the handle of the suitcase tighter and walked down the dusty village street, feeling the hot earth through her worn sandals and the heavy weight of having nowhere to turn. Then she heard barking behind her. She turned around. Luna came running, paws kicking up dust, tongue hanging out, warm brown eyes full of the kind of loyalty only dogs can give. "Take that useless mutt with you," Ramon shouted from the doorway. "I'm not feeding another mouth for nothing." Luna caught up, pressed her muzzle against Mariana's leg, and looked up as if to say, "Wherever you go, I go too." Mariana crouched down, stroked the dog's golden brown head, and felt her eyes sting. At least one living soul had chosen her. They walked for hours under a merciless sun. The village disappeared behind them. The road cut through dry golden grass, crooked fences, and twisted trees that seemed to pray to the sky. Mariana had no destination. She knew no one anywhere. Her pockets were empty. Inside the suitcase were 3 changes of clothes, a comb, a small bar of soap, her birth certificate, and the little painted Virgin her mother had left her, the paint already flaking from the hands. Occasionally a cart passed in the distance, but Mariana never asked for a ride. She was ashamed to explain where she was going, because the truth was she wasn't going anywhere. Luna trotted beside her without complaint, sometimes stopping to sniff bushes before running back. Always close, always faithful. Now they had only each other. The sun was already setting when Mariana noticed a narrow path branching off the main road, almost hidden by tall weeds. Something made her stop. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe an instinct she couldn't name. Maybe guidance from above for someone who no longer knew how to walk alone. Luna stepped onto the path first, sniffing the ground with interest. Mariana followed, pushing branches aside with one hand while holding the suitcase with the other. They walked about 500 meters through thick growth until the vegetation thinned and opened onto a clearing. There stood a quiet adobe house with a tiled roof in old colonial style. Once the walls had been white, now a crooked wooden fence leaned and was broken in places. Vines had claimed almost everything, climbing the walls and covering what must once have been a clean courtyard. No lights, no voices, no sign that anyone had been here for many years. Mariana stood still, heart pounding with a strange mixture of fear and something that felt like hope. She pushed what remained of the wooden gate and approached the front door. It was ajar. When she pushed it open, the wood gave a long, mournful creak that echoed in the sunset silence. Inside smelled of dampness and frozen time. Golden evening light poured through glassless windows, illuminating a dusty plank floor scattered with dry leaves and cobwebs. An old table, 2 overturned chairs, and a solid wood-burning stove stood in the kitchen corner. Mariana set her suitcase down and walked through the entire house. 2 small bedrooms with iron bed frames but no mattresses. Empty shelves. A backyard so overgrown it was impossible to see what lay beyond. Luna sniffed every corner, every crack, every shadow, then returned to Mariana and lay down calmly at her feet, as if approving the place. Mariana sat on the threshold, looking at the sky turning orange and violet. For the first time since leaving her stepfather's house, she took a deep, real breath. She didn't know whose estate this was. She didn't know if someone would appear tomorrow to drive her away. She didn't know how she would eat, stay warm, or survive with nothing. But one thing she knew with absolute certainty that made her chest ache: she would not go back. She would not beg anyone for shelter. She would no longer let the world decide what she deserved. If this house was empty and abandoned, it was perfect for her, because Mariana herself felt exactly the same way. The first night was the hardest of her life. No food, no fire, no blanket. She lay on the hard wooden floor using the suitcase as a pillow, while Luna curled against her stomach, sharing what warmth she could against the pre-dawn chill. Her stomach growled. Night sounds terrified a girl who had never slept alone in the wilderness. Owls, crickets, cracking branches. Wind whispered through open windows in a language she didn't understand. Mariana quietly recited the prayer her mother had taught her. She pressed the little virgin figurine to her chest and asked for strength to last just one more day. Only one day, and then another and another. She fell asleep to Luna's steady breathing and the hunger gnawing inside her. When the sun rose and its first rays entered through the glassless window, Mariana opened her eyes and lay still, watching a lizard chase an insect across the dark wooden ceiling. Every muscle ached. Her mouth was dry. Hunger hollowed her chest. But she was alive. She was safe. This roof, old and cracked as it was, belonged to no one who could throw her out. She rose slowly, rubbed her eyes, and stepped into the backyard with Luna at her heels. Among the tall weeds, she saw something that made her heart leap. An old mango tree with a thick, gnarled trunk. Ripe yellow fruit lay on the ground, fragrant and split open by the sun. Mariana picked one up, wiped it on her dress, and took a bite. Sweet juice ran down her chin. She closed her eyes, tasting it as if it were the finest meal she had ever eaten, because in that moment it was. Her first victory in this place. That morning she ate 3 mangoes, shared pieces with Luna, and then sat beneath the old tree looking at the abandoned estate with new eyes. She no longer saw ruins. She saw possibility. She heard a stream running somewhere nearby. She spotted guava trees hidden in the brush. She noticed dark, fertile soil beneath the neglect. She saw the sturdy stove that could work if she could light a fire. And for the first time in a long while, she saw a future that depended only on her own 2 hands. It wasn't a beautiful future yet. It wasn't comfortable or secure, but it was hers. And that was enough. The very first thing she needed was fire. Without it, there would be no hot food, no boiled water, no light when darkness fell. Mariana remembered vaguely how her mother used to strike stones to spark the stove, but she had never done it herself. She gathered dry leaves and thin twigs, arranged them carefully inside the wood stove, and spent the entire morning striking 2 rocks she had found in the yard. Her hands grew sore from the endless attempts. She tried softer straw, different ways of blowing, even rubbing sticks together the way she had once seen someone do. Nothing worked. Disappointment washed over her like a hot wave. Mariana sat on the kitchen floor with trembling hands and eyes full of tears. Luna came over and laid her head on the girl's lap as if to say mistakes were allowed. And right there, with the dog's warm weight on her knees and shame burning in her chest for failing at the simplest task, Mariana understood that surviving alone would demand a patience she had never needed before. She tried again, this time scraping the stones slowly and firmly instead of striking them. Suddenly a spark flew and landed on the dry straw. Mariana cupped her hands around the tiny glowing point, blowing gently, protecting it. The straw caught, then a twig, then thin branches. When the first steady flame rose in the old stove, Mariana cried out with joy. The sound startled birds from the mango tree. Luna barked along with her, infected by the excitement, and together they watched the fire grow as though it were the most beautiful thing in the world. In that moment it truly was. It was proof that Mariana could learn, could act, could manage. She boiled water in an old pot she found deep in the cupboard and drank it hot, feeling the warm liquid soothe her parched throat. There was no sugar, no coffee, but it was clean hot water, more than she had the night before. On the second day, Mariana followed the sound of water she had heard since arriving. Luna ran ahead through the thick brush. After 200 meters of dense vegetation, they found it, a narrow stream with crystal clear water running over smooth stones, shaded by trees that formed a green tunnel above it. The water was so transparent she could see pebbles and tiny silver fish darting between them. Mariana knelt at the bank, dipped her hands in, and brought the cold, sweet water to her face. She drank until her stomach felt full, then sat listening to the gentle murmur for the first time since leaving Ramon's house. A feeling close to peace settled over her. Luna splashed into the stream, trying unsuccessfully to catch the fish, and Mariana laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. The sound surprised even her. Food remained the most pressing problem. Mangoes kept her going, but she knew she could not live on fruit alone. She needed something more substantial. Luna solved that problem on the third day. The dog disappeared into the forest for nearly an hour and returned carrying a dead wild rabbit in her jaws. She laid the catch proudly at Mariana's feet. Mariana stared at the small animal, her stomach turning. She had never butchered game, but hunger proved stronger than disgust. She remembered how Ramon used to prepare animals in the yard and tried to copy him with a rusty knife from the kitchen drawer. It was clumsy, slow, and messy, but by evening she had meat roasting over the fire. The smell filled the house. Luna lay by the kitchen door, eyes shining with anticipation. That night they shared the meal, and Mariana felt grateful in a way she had never known. "Thank you, my friend," she whispered to the dog, stroking her ears. "You brought us dinner today." God sends help in the most unexpected forms, she thought, sometimes on four paws with a constantly wagging tail. During the first week, Mariana explored everything the estate offered. Besides the mango tree, she found 2 guava trees heavy with fruit, a wild passion fruit vine climbing an old fence, and in the far corner, bushes of edible greens. A slender papaya tree stood near the stream. Fish swam in the clear water, and Mariana spent 2 full days trying to catch them with a homemade line made from jute thread and a hook bent from wire she found in an old shed. She lost bait and patience many times, sitting for hours on her heels by the bank. Then one evening she felt a sharp tug and pulled out a small silver fish. It fit in her palm, yet she held it like a trophy. That same evening she caught 3 more and walked home with a new stride, the stride of someone who had just proven she could feed herself from this land with her own hands. At the end of the second week came the discovery that changed everything. While sweeping the smallest back room, Mariana noticed one floorboard gave way differently than the others, as if something hollow lay beneath. She knelt, slipped her fingers into the crack, and pulled. The board came up easily, revealing a dark niche. Inside was a wooden box the size of a drawer, covered in dust and cobwebs. Mariana carried it into the brighter room and opened it. Her heart tightened strangely. There was a small hand mirror in a silver frame darkened by time, a tortoiseshell comb missing several teeth, packets of dry seeds carefully labeled in neat handwriting, and a thick notebook with yellowed pages filled with drawings of plants, planting schedules, tea recipes, and herbal remedies for every kind of ailment. She spent hours turning the pages, deciphering the old-fashioned script. Whoever wrote this knew the land, the plants, and the secrets nature keeps for those patient enough to learn. No name, no date, just knowledge left with care by someone who wanted it to survive. At the very bottom, beneath everything else, lay a cloth doll in a faded printed dress with black wool hair, sewn by hand with strong, loving stitches. In that moment, Mariana understood the previous inhabitant had been a woman who understood the earth, who had a daughter or granddaughter, and who for some unknown reason had left suddenly, hiding her most precious things beneath the floor. The third week brought Donna Carmela. Mariana was pulling weeds around the fruit trees when Luna gave a short, curious bark from the front of the house. Not a warning, but one of interest. Mariana went to see and found an elderly woman standing beyond the broken fence, leaning on a wooden cane. She wore a wide straw hat that shaded a dark, deeply wrinkled face. She looked about 70, perhaps older, but her eyes were sharp and alive. She studied Mariana for a moment, then spoke. "I saw smoke rising from the chimney. No one has lit a fire in this house for many years." Mariana's body went cold with fear, thinking the woman had come to drive her away. But Donna Carmela stepped through the gate with the ease of someone entering her own kitchen. She looked around, nodding approval at the work already done in the yard, and offered her basket. Inside were cassava flour, brown sugar, dried meat, and a bunch of fresh herbs. Mariana tried to refuse, saying she had nothing to give in return. "When God sends food, you don't refuse it," the old woman said, waving her hand. "I live alone, about 3 kilometers from here on the other side of the stream. I'm a midwife and healer. I knew the woman who once lived here." Mariana's heart raced. She wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but Donna Carmela lived by the unhurried rhythm of old people who know stories should not be rushed. Instead, she asked what Mariana was eating and whether she knew how to plant anything. When the girl admitted she knew almost nothing and survived on fruit, small fish, and whatever Luna hunted, the old woman burst into a hoarse laugh that shook her whole body. Donna Carmela returned the next day carrying cassava cuttings, sweet potato slips, pumpkin and bean seeds. She spent the morning teaching Mariana how to prepare the soil, dig to the right depth, and space each plant properly. "Cassava is a savior for those with nothing," she explained. "It grows in poor soil, survives drought, and gives flour, flatbread, strength for heavy work." Mariana listened like someone hearing gold. Her hands, which had only known pots, brooms, and needles, now sank into dark earth, feeling its moisture and life. When the old woman left at the end of the day, Mariana stood looking at the freshly planted rows with a feeling she could not name, fear mixed with hope, doubt mixed with desire. For the first time, she was doing something truly her own. Days fell into a rhythm. Mariana rose with the sun, fetched water, fished, tended the fire, cooked, and worked the land. Luna stayed close, hunting, scaring away snakes with fierce barks, and sleeping curled at her feet like a faithful guardian. Mariana's body changed. Thin arms grew strong from digging and carrying. Palms became rough with calluses. Sunburned skin gained freckles across her nose. And her eyes, once filled with fear and emptiness, now shone with a new light, the light of someone discovering what she was made of inside. One night, after a long day, she opened the notebook again and studied the herbal recipes more carefully. The next day, she took it to the garden and began matching drawings to the plants growing wild around the house. Many were right there, waiting for someone to recognize them. She felt a deep connection to the unknown woman who had written the notebook, as though they spoke across time through the same earth and the same need to survive. 6 weeks after arriving with only a cardboard suitcase, Mariana saw the first bean sprout push through the soil, tiny, green, reaching for the sun. She crouched and stared at it so long that Luna came and nudged her hand. Mariana touched the delicate leaf gently, and something rose in her throat. Not quite tears, not quite laughter, but something in between. Proof. The earth had answered her labor. The earth had accepted her in a way no person ever had. In the following days, the garden woke up row by row. Cassava pushed out broad leaves. Pumpkins spread long vines as if wanting to embrace the whole plot. Sweet potatoes quietly gathered strength underground. Mariana watched it all and felt a pride she had never known, the pride of someone who had created something from nothing with her own strength and stubbornness. Donna Carmela visited every week, bringing supplies and knowledge, taking away doubts and replacing them with confidence. She taught Mariana how to make cassava flour, a process that took several days and demanded every ounce of energy. First, they cleaned the roots, then grated them on a perforated tin grater. They pressed out the poisonous juice, then roasted the mass in a clay oven they built together from bricks salvaged from a collapsed wall. The first batch came out burned on one side and raw on the other. Mariana nearly cried in frustration. But the second was better, and the third turned out perfect, dry, crisp, filling the kitchen with a smell that made Luna lift her ears with interest. Mariana poured the flour into a clay jar and felt as though she held gold. In the village, flour meant life. It separated the full from the hungry. 2 months after her arrival, Mariana decided it was time to visit the village. She needed salt, matches, thread, things the land could not provide. She packed a small bag of flour, ripe guavas, and a bunch of healing herbs, tied it in clean cloth, and set off. The village lay about 7 kilometers away. Luna, of course, trotted beside her with simple doggy joy. The settlement was small, a handful of adobe houses around a white chapel, and a shop with a wooden awning where men sat smoking and talking. Mariana entered the shop with her heart hammering. She had not spoken to many people except Dona Carmela for months. Shyness tightened her throat, but the flour spoke for her. The shopkeeper, a stout man with thin mustache named Don Nestor, tasted the flour, raised his eyebrows, and asked where it came from. When Mariana explained she had made it herself at the old estate beyond the road, silence fell. Heads turned. Don Nestor looked at her with a mixture of surprise and disbelief. "Be careful with that land," he said quietly, after exchanging glances with the others. "People around here have their eyes on it." Mariana did not fully understand the warning, but she stored it away. She returned home with supplies and a new unease that would not leave her. The answer came the following week. Mariana was harvesting beans when she heard hooves. A man on a fine horse approached the broken gate. He was middle-aged, solidly built, wearing an expensive gray felt hat. His small eyes seemed to calculate the value of everything they saw. He dismounted without asking permission and walked around the property, inspecting the garden, the fruit trees, the new clay oven, with the look of a man taking inventory of what he already considered his. "I am Senor Vargas," he introduced himself in a voice smooth as a threat. "Landowner in these parts. I'm surprised to see someone living here. I'm interested in acquiring this property." Mariana felt the familiar chill crawl up her spine, the same chill she had felt when Ramon raised his voice. "I found the estate abandoned," she answered steadily. "I live here and care for it. I'm not leaving." Senor Vargas smiled the way powerful men smile when something small amuses them. "Think carefully, girl. A woman alone on land without papers is a fragile thing. I'll return to talk again." He mounted and rode away. Dust hung in the air long after he disappeared. That same month, Diego passed by for the first time. He was a mule driver transporting goods between villages. He stopped at the stream to water his 3 mules and found Mariana fishing barefoot, dress tucked up to her knees, hair gathered in a loose bun that the wind kept trying to unravel. Luna barked a warning but did not charge. Diego raised his hands peacefully. He was a young man with sun-darkened skin, strong working hands, and a thin scar on his chin that gave his serious face the look of someone who already had stories to tell. He asked permission to use the water. Mariana agreed, saying little. Something in the gentle way he handled the mules made her watch longer than she intended. Diego thanked her, asked if she needed anything from the next village. She declined. He touched the brim of his hat respectfully and continued on his way. Mariana remained on the riverbank with a heartbeat she did not recognize and was not sure she wanted to understand. 2 weeks later, Diego passed again. This time, Mariana had a request: seeds for cilantro and onions she had not found in Don Nestor's shop. Dona Carmela had suggested asking the mule driver. Mariana waited on the road with a small jar of flour. When she saw the mules in the distance, unexpected excitement fluttered in her chest. She caught herself smoothing her hair. Diego brought the seeds wrapped in paper and refused the flour. "The seeds cost almost nothing," he said. "It would be a shame to trade good flour for them." Mariana insisted she did not like owing anyone. They reached a polite impasse until Diego suggested she pay with a cup of coffee if she had any. She did. While the coffee brewed, Diego waited respectfully on the veranda, talking softly to Luna, who for the first time did not bark at a stranger and even allowed an ear scratch. They drank coffee sitting at a proper distance, he on the lower step, she on the upper. Their conversation was short: weather, the road, market prices. Yet in those few words, something quiet began to grow, like a seed beneath the soil waiting for the right moment. The weeks that followed brought new achievements. Dona Carmela gave her a laying hen. Mariana built a simple coop from reeds and branches. Soon there were more hens, traded for flour. Diego brought another as a gift, claiming it was extra from his load. Mariana accepted, knowing it was not extra, but pretended to believe him. His kindness was delicate, it asked for nothing in return. The garden now produced cilantro, onions, ripe pumpkins, and enough beans to eat and trade. Mariana walked to the village every 2 weeks with a full basket and returned with salt, sugar, kerosene, needles, and thread. Village women began coming to her after one of them, Doña Matilde, asked for tea for joint pain. The mixture from the old notebook worked. Word spread. Soon women came with fevers, sleeplessness, colic. Mariana always reminded them she was only learning from the notebook and Dona Carmela, but results mattered more than titles. She stopped being the stranger from the abandoned estate and became the girl who knew herbs, the one who understood the land better than many born here. But Señor Vargas had not forgotten. He returned one evening with 2 riders. This time his voice carried open threat. "This land belongs to me by right of neighborly use," and he said. "I have grazed cattle on it for years. A woman without documents living here will look like a squatter in the eyes of the law." Mariana's legs trembled, but her voice stayed firm. "The real squatter is the one who enters without invitation. I have cared for this land while you let it grow wild." Señor Vargas lost his patience. His face hardened. "You have until the end of the month. After that, I will take measures. It will be worse for you if you resist." He rode off at a gallop. His men lingered a moment longer, marking the territory with their eyes. Luna growled, hackles raised, until they finally left. Mariana sat on the ground with shaking hands, looking at the garden she had built with such effort, at the chickens, at the clay oven she and Dona Carmela had raised brick by brick. Fear gripped her throat the way it had in Ramon's house. She could lose everything. Luna pressed her warm body against her leg. Mariana stroked the dog's head, took a deep breath, and did what she always did when the world pressed too hard. She stood up, because the earth was for planting, not for sitting idle. She did not sleep that night. She sat on the veranda with Luna, thinking. Running was not an option. She had run once and promised herself she would never run again. But facing Vargas alone felt like trying to stop a river with bare hands. When morning came, she did what she always did. She boiled coffee and went to work the garden. If she was going to lose everything, at least she would not lose it sitting with folded hands. Dona Carmela brought the first real help 2 days later. She immediately noticed the change in Mariana, tense face, sleepless eyes. When Mariana told her about Vargas and the deadline, the old woman listened in silence, eyes darkening with old anger. Then she sat under the mango tree and for the first time spoke about the woman who had lived here before. Her name was Rosora. She came from far away, running from a life that was breaking her. She found this abandoned place and made it her whole world. She planted, learned the secrets of herbs, helped women in the area. She lived here peacefully with her little daughter until Vargas's father, cut from the same cloth as the son, wanted the land because of the stream that watered his pastures. He pressured her in every way possible. Rosora resisted as long as she could, but she fell ill. When she realized she could fight no longer, she took her daughter and left in the middle of the night, hiding the notebook, seeds, and her daughter's doll under the floor, as if promising that someday someone would return to continue what she started. Mariana listened with tears in her eyes, hand pressed to her chest, feeling a deep bond with the woman she had never met. Dona Carmela told her more. Rosora had never sold the land. Vargas's father had never managed to take it because there were no documents in his favor. The estate was still registered in Rosora's name. Vargas was bluffing, counting on a lonely woman not daring to check. Something shifted inside Mariana. The fear turned into a hot, solid resolve that straightened her shoulders. The next day, she walked to the village and went straight to the notary's small office behind the church. Old Don Augusto found the record. The land belonged to Rosora Santos, unencumbered, no debts, no transfer to Vargas. He explained that someone who lives on and improves abandoned land for a long time can claim ownership, but it would be simpler if she found Rosora or her heirs for a proper transfer. Dona Carmela knew where Rosora lived, in a village 3 days' journey away. She was old and ill but alive, and her daughter lived with her. Diego carried the letter. Mariana wrote it by the light of a kerosene lamp, telling Rosora everything, how she had found the hidden treasures, how she had used the notebook, helped women with teas, kept the doll safe. She asked simply and honestly for permission to stay and continue what Rosora had begun. Before leaving, Diego stopped in front of her. "You are the strongest person I have ever met," he said quietly. "Any land would be lucky to have someone like you caring for it." Mariana's face burned. She could only manage a soft thank you. But as he walked away with the mules, she stood watching until the dust settled, her heart beating in a rhythm that had nothing to do with fear. Señor Vargas returned sooner than expected, and this time he did not come alone. 4 riders accompanied him, filling the yard with arrogance. He dismounted and declared the deadline had passed. "Leave today," he ordered. "If you don't go willingly, you'll go by force." Luna charged forward with a fury Mariana had never seen, teeth bared, fur raised. One of the men reined in his frightened horse. Mariana called the dog back and stood firmly on the veranda, trembling inside but steady outside. "I am not leaving," she said clearly. "I have been to the notary. You have no documents on this land. If you touch anything here, you will answer to the law." Vargas's face twisted with rage. He stepped toward her. But before he could speak, a voice came from the road. It was Dona Carmela, and she was not alone. Behind her walked Doña Matilde, Don Nestor from the shop. 4 women Mariana had helped with teas, and 2 men from the market. They had seen the horses and understood what was happening. Dona Carmela reached the yard, leaning on her cane, and fixed Vargas with those sharp, owl-like eyes. "Everyone here knows this land belongs to Rosora Santos," she announced loudly. "It is recorded in the notary's office for anyone who wishes to check. Threatening a girl who lives alone and works honestly is a wickedness even God will not forgive." The women nodded firmly. Don Nestor, despite owing Vargas favors, spoke up with a clear conscience and confirmed the records. Vargas looked around and realized for the first time he was not facing one lonely woman, but an entire community that had chosen Mariana's side. With clenched jaw, he mounted his horse and rode away without another word. Everyone knew he would not return. Cowards only attack those who stand alone. Diego returned 10 days later with Rosora's answer. Mariana opened the letter with trembling hands and read it aloud to Dona Carmela on the veranda. Rosara wrote that she had cried with every word, never imagining someone would find what she had hidden. She was overjoyed that the herb still lived and the notebook was being used. She declared the land now belonged to Mariana and would send her daughter to sign the transfer papers. In return, she asked only that Mariana never let the garden die, that she continue helping those in need and pass the knowledge forward. At the bottom of the envelope lay an old photograph, a young dark-skinned woman in a simple dress holding a little girl. On the back, written in pencil, "Rosora and Clara at the estate." Mariana placed the photograph beside the cloth doll on a shelf in the living room. That corner became a quiet altar where past and present met without needing words. The transfer was completed a month later. Clara, Rosora's daughter, arrived in person, a woman in her 40s with her mother's smile and tears in her eyes at the sight of the revived estate. She signed the papers before Don Augusto, embraced Mariana like a sister, and took the carefully mended cloth doll with her. Both women cried on the veranda while Luna wagged her tail, confused by the emotion. The land now belonged to Mariana both on paper and in truth. That evening, she sat on the veranda looking at the garden bathed in moonlight, at the ripe pumpkins, the sleeping chickens, the cornfield that now fed not only her, but many in the village. Diego appeared at the gate as he did more and more often, not for deliveries, but simply to be near. He sat on the step beside her. They were silent for a time that needed no words. Then he offered his hand and Mariana took it. They remained like that, fingers intertwined, watching silver moonlight paint the estate, feeling something quiet and strong growing between them, the same way everything strong grows from the earth when given care and time. Months passed, and the estate became an example for the whole region. Mariana had cornfields, a proper chicken coop, a goat Diego brought on one trip that gave milk, cheese, and a kid. In the first year, she made flour, soap, and healing teas that women traveled from distant villages to buy. Diego stayed longer and longer until one day he simply stopped leaving. No grand announcement was needed. Everyone could see that the quiet mule driver and the stubborn girl had chosen each other in the simple way village people do, by staying, by building together day after day, side by side. Dona Carmela laughed and said Rosora would be delighted to know her old estate now even had its own official mule driver. Luna grew old there, muzzle turning white, steps slowing, but she remained nearby, always faithful, sleeping on the veranda as the official guardian of the place. One sunny day, almost 2 years after her arrival, Mariana was cutting herbs in the garden when Luna gave the short, curious bark she knew so well. She walked to the house and saw a thin young girl at the gate, clutching a small bundle of clothes with frightened eyes. The girl asked in a trembling voice if this was the home of the woman who helped those with nowhere to go. Mariana looked at her and saw herself 2 years earlier, the same fear, the same desperate hope for a new beginning. She opened the gate. "Come in," she said gently. "There is hot food, a bed, and work for those who want it. No one will drive you away here." The girl entered in tears. Mariana embraced her in the middle of the yard, feeling in her chest the quiet certainty that only someone who has lost everything and rebuilt it can know. The estate that no one had wanted became what it had always been since Rosora's time, a refuge, a land of new beginnings, a place where women rejected by the world discovered they still had roots. And when a root finds good soil, no force on earth can tear it out. Some people look back and see only what they lost. Mariana learned to look forward and see what could still be planted. She had not been given luck or inheritance or an easy path. What she had was the stubbornness of someone who refuses to accept that the end of the road is the end of the story. She had hands that learned to dig, sow, and harvest what life had tried to deny her. And she had the humility to accept help that God placed on her path, sometimes in the form of a wise old woman, sometimes a quiet mule driver, sometimes a golden brown dog who simply decided not to leave her. The truth is, no one rebuilds a life completely alone, even if they begin that way. And perhaps the main lesson this story leaves is this: the most forgotten places on earth need someone stubborn enough to believe that life can grow there again.